Our today's topic is why projects are usually late. See, this discussion applies to all sorts of projects. The projects may be standalone projects or multiple projects in your organization. Projects may be small or medium size or large. Your customer, okay, could be external or could be internal. The nature of work could be, say, product development, or it could be construction, or it could be some design kind of work, or it could be IT, infrastructure or software development, or anything. This discussion applies to all these kinds of projects. See, all these projects, most of these projects are difficult to manage because of two things. The first thing is that they involve uncertainty. Okay, the degree may vary, but uncertainty is always there. And the second thing, which is even more challenging, is that they typically have three commitments, and these commitments are competing with each other. What are those commitments? One is due date, second one is budget, and the third one is scope. These three commitments are competing with each other. So these two things, uncertainty and these three promises, makes managing projects more difficult. Do most projects deliver just what the client needs when promised and at or under budget? Worldwide experience says otherwise. Projects usually have great excuses for not meeting one or more necessary conditions. You may have heard about some very big projects like, say, Channel project. It was late by 19 months and cost overrun, budget overrun was by 3 billion dollars. There was another big project called Denver Airport Baggage System. This project was late by 15 months and they had to pay $1 million per day as interest. Then there was another big project, superconducting supercollider. This project was terminated, called off. I remember Dr. Goddard also had mentioned, one Olympic, I don't recollect which. They had to build a stadium, okay, before a particular date because on that day the games would start, and they couldn't complete everything, so they gave up on the roof. There was no roof on the stadium. So this is what happens with the projects. Since the projects show the same symptoms across many types and sizes over a long period of time and even across many countries and cultures, isn't it likely that there is a fundamental flaw in the way we manage projects? There is. So today we'll look at one such fundamental flaw related to estimates and safety. So let's have a look at that. Let me quickly run through the definitions just to recap your memory. Most of you okay, must be doing it. Let us not get into that discussion. So the definitions are: what is project? Okay, project is a temporary endeavor designed to produce a unique product, service, or result with a defined beginning and end, undertaken to meet unique goals and objectives. What is project management? Project management is the practice of initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing the work of a team to achieve specific goals and meet specific success criteria. Now, what is project success and what is project management success? These two are different things. Project success is this: a project is said to be successful when it succeeds in achieving the expected business case of the outcome of the objective of doing the project. So if you wanted to build a fort, you have built a fort. Okay, project is successful. But project management success is if the given project is completed within the agreed time, within the budget, and met all the agreed scope, then we can say it is a project management success. See, projects are execution of projects or project management is it's a balancing act. See, there is a scope, schedule, and budget. These are the three minimum promises that you make, and they are standing on some rods. Those rods are placed on a rotating disc. This rotating disc is placed on a ball which is standing on a slanting rod, and there are three springs below that, and there are dependent events, statistical variation, and human behavior, which are riding on a bumpy road of reality. So everything is uncertain, everything is moving, and we have to do that balancing. We have seen this kind of balancing in circus, but this balancing even much more difficult than that. So what has been the project performance overall? There is a group called Standish Group, which periodically does the study. Now, in 2015, they had studied some 50,000 projects, and their findings are only 29% of the projects were successful, 52% were challenged. Challenge meaning either there was budget overrun or scope overrun or time overrun. And 19% projects failed, means they were cancelled. Now, this is what the situation is. And now we want to look at one aspect of it, is that the buffer or safety in project estimates. Now, if I ask this question to anybody who is working in projects, that is there any buffer or safety in your estimates? His blunt answer is going to be no. Our estimates are so tight that there is no room for any safety or buffer or any extra time. But if his boss asks him, he will give a politically correct answer. Okay? He will say that there is a 10% that I have kept in my estimate. If that person is really very, very, very cooperative, he may say 20%. But I'm saying no. The safety or buffer in your project estimates is much more than what you can even imagine. How it is done, like I came across this cartoon, so I thought of showing you. Somebody is asking this fellow that I'm finishing up the estimation. How much time do you need for the feature we discuss? Now this fellow has no clue whatsoever. So what he says, what he does, he generates some random number and says, okay, so many hours. So this is how many times estimation at task level is done. Many times. I'm not saying every time, but particularly when you are not very much experienced on that kind of task, you are likely to do this kind of thing. Some blind guess. So let's understand what a project estimate is. See, an estimate is subject to high level of uncertainty. The level or degree of uncertainty may vary, but what it means is that it could be indefinite, indeterminate, not certain to occur, to be problematic, not known beyond doubt. We are not very sure what all is really required, and it's not constant. The requirements keep changing as you develop. Now let us estimate one project. We have a team and we have been given a task to estimate a project. Now what do? We say that we do understand the requirements well and say that there are going to be about 8 tasks in the project to be done in sequence. About 8 tasks. Then we had a look at the time and we came to the conclusion that each task will take about 8 days. Let's take a very, very simple example. It's not a realistic one, I agree. But in order to convey my point, I want to take this example. So we are estimating a project. We are saying that there are about 8 tasks, and each task will take about 8 days. So how much time will it take? How will calculate? The 8 sequential tasks, right? So we say 8 tasks into 8 days. So what is going to be your answer? What is 8 times 8? You will say, of course, 64. Now I'm asking you, are you sure? You look at me and say, what do you think about us? We are highly educated people. You are asking us this stupid question, what is 8 times 8? And the answer is very obvious. And you are asking us, are you sure? Okay, I said, fine. Let me ask you another question. My question is, what is 8? You say, what do you mean, what is 8? You said that there are going to be about 8 tasks, right? And each task will take about 8 days. I said, correct. I said, about 8 tasks. What do we mean by about 8 tasks? Not exactly 8 tasks, but around 8 tasks. So it could mean 8 plus 1 or 8 minus 1. The project may have 7 tasks or it may have 9 tasks. Similarly, when I say about 8 days for a task, it could mean some tasks may need 7 days, some tasks may need 8 days, some tasks may need 9 days. Now this uncertainty has come in. So how do you estimate? Earlier it was very clear. We said 8 tasks multiplied by 8 days, 64. But being in project environment, we are not certain. So we are saying when we say 8 tasks, we mean about 8 tasks, means 8 plus minus 1, and 8 days would mean, of course, again 8 plus minus 1. So what is your estimate now? 8 plus minus 1 times 8 plus minus 1. So it would be a range. So your estimate would be somewhere between 49, that is 8 minus 1, that is 7 into 7, 49, or 9 into 9, 81. If you are novice, if you are a beginner, and if you are doing estimate, your estimate is likely to be closer to 49. If you are experienced somewhat, your estimate is likely to be around 81. And if you are highly experienced in executing projects, your estimate could even be beyond 81. Now, what does all this mean? But wait, before we discuss that, another question. This 8 plus minus 1 has no meaning. It could also be 8 plus minus 2. We don't know. We are doing a project. Everything is not well known. Tasks are not well known. We might have done similar projects, and that's why we can say that there is a degree of uncertainty in number of tasks also, and the time that okay, each task will take. So, if it is 8 plus minus 2, then the estimate could be in the range of 36 to 100 days. Now, this is the wide range. So, an estimate is an estimate. It is not a sacrosanct number. It is not a commitment. It is a range of possibilities, and that therefore it's a range of possibilities. By default, it has what is really required is the time that is needed for a task plus buffer plus safety. Now, how we'll see that? How much safety is normally kept in the project? As I said, if you ask the estimator, he will say no safety, or he will say 10%, and if he is far too cooperative, he may say 20%. But imagine you are doing an estimate, and you know that you are judged by the quality of the estimate, in the sense that if you say this task is going to take 10 days, if it happens to take even 11 days, your boss will look down upon you and say you don't know how to estimate. The estimate is bad. You are an inefficient fellow, and all that. And your intention is also good. When you want to give an estimate, you want to make it sure that you are able to finish that task within that time. Now, within that time, it is not that exactly that much of time. So you tend to keep, safety or buffer intuitively based on your recent work experience. Now, to what extent it will be? It is not 10%, it is not 20%, but you will be surprised to know that could be anything between 80 to 95%. 80% to 95% is the safety in your estimate. And that too, if it will be 80% if have very little experience, and it will be closer to 90% if you are the 95% if you are highly experienced. So what does it actually contain? Come on, let us have a look at it. What does an estimate contain? It contains the amount of time the task will take if everything goes reasonably well. That is the real reasonable time, reasonable amount of time that this kind of task generally takes this amount of time. But is that all? No. It contains that reasonable amount of time plus the time you need to cope up with uncertainty. So if you have quoted a time, reasonable amount of time that is required, and that is your estimate, you are bound to fall flat on your face because you are not considered the uncertainty. So you add that time. Okay, once you have fallen flat on that, you say, oh, there is a lot of uncertainty. So let me estimate what is the reasonable time. To that, let us add the uncertainty. Is that all? No. Again, you fall flat when you do that, because your estimate also needs to contain not only the reasonable amount of time to do the task, and not only to take care of uncertainty, but you need to spend time on other tasks and activities. You are working in an organization. You are not just left alone to do your task. So you add some amount of time at other tasks, because every day there are some routines or some meetings or some parties in the office, some birthday celebration, anything. It can be any kind of task. So since you have fallen flat earlier, you add this also. And again, despite that, you fall flat on your face, because you need to add one more aspect to it, is that there are interruptions in your work. You are never allowed to work peacefully, continuously, focused. Have you ever heard anybody saying that I'm going home so that I can work? See, this is the level of interruption that could be there in your work environment. So, your estimate contains the amount of reasonable time, plus uncertainty, plus time for other tasks, plus the interruptions. Now, how do you estimate? Do you estimate in this sequence? Do you say that, okay, first let me estimate for the reasonable time, then I will add uncertainty, then I will add the time for other tasks, then I will add the time for interruptions? No. You go by your recent worst experience. Worst experience, I'm saying. Yeah, last month or in last project, I did this kind of task and it had taken some 10 days. You don't know the setup like this. You just go by that experience. And you say if last time I had taken 10 days and I just barely finished in 10 days, so you will have your 2 months whether you should estimate it at 10 days, or you should say, let me add one more day so that I'm safe. So this is how these are the contents of the estimate of which we are not aware of. So there is so much of safety or so much of buffer that we build at task level when we are estimating, of which we are not even aware, because we do it intuitively. We estimate the task based on our recent worst experience. So this is how we add. So if you draw it as a curve, the red part shows the reasonable time, and the other time that gets added. So that becomes the probability of the task duration. It may be more, it may be less, depending upon how much uncertainty is there, how many other tasks you have to do when you are doing this particular task. And there could be some days where there are no interruption, or you are working on a holiday. You choose to work on a holiday so that you can work peacefully. So this time can vary. So when you estimate, if you say give only the reasonable estimate, it will be around 50%, and you will fall flat, and all your tasks will be late. You will get blamed by that. So you will learn from that experience, and at least you will give the up to estimate up to 80% of the overall time. And if you are more experienced, you will really wonder where you should give the estimate, at 80%, 90%, or 95%. Almost certainly, projects contain substantial variability. Most people are unaware of this, and they can't tell you how much safety, how much variability is considered while estimating. So you cannot ask them this question as to how much safety have you kept. And if you ask them, they will be suspicious. So why are you asking this? As such, I'm very tight on my schedule. And if I tell you that I put some 20% safety or 5% safety or even 10% safety, I'm worried that you are going to cut it. So there's no point in asking, no point in probing, no point in trying to find out how much time is really required for the task and how much is the safety for all the possibilities. Maybe you would have some interruption, some distractions, or some uncertainty, some variability, something. You just can't decipher. So what I'm saying is that our estimates contain safety or buffer to the extent of anything between 80% to 95%. Now, if you are a project person, you're not going to like this, not going to like this at all. But you are a nice person, gentleman. So you'll ask me, come on, Rajiv, is this really true? Or you are kidding us? or it is some kind of prank. How can it be like that, man? Come on, it can't be like that. I don't believe that there is so much of safety. What are you saying? And if I say you have to answer this question, is this true? I say yes. I often experience the anger from the other side. The other person gets really angry on me and he just shooting questions. The first question that he asks, you are saying that there is so much of buffer, right? Where is the buffer? This is my estimate. I will look at it and show me where is the buffer. And if it is there in my estimate, why it is not clearly visible to me? Tell me. I very calmly and patiently answer him that look, you have not explicitly added this buffer. It got intuitively added based on your recent worst experience. As I told you, you are not estimating for the minimum time. You are estimating for the time that certain task will take based on your past experience. That is one thing. And the second thing is that this safety is not put at the end of the project. You are not saying that there are 10 tasks and they are going to take there are 10 sequential tasks and they are going to take 100 days of time. So let me add some 10 more days or 15 more days as safety. That is not the way you do it. It is added at the task level. So it is spread across the project. So then you lose visibility. You just don't know where it is and how much it is. Then even then the person is not happy. He's very angry, he's still angry. So he asks me, okay, other question. He stands up and puts his hand. He says, Rajiv, tell me, you are saying that every task has safety between 80 to 95%, right? I said, yes, right. Then, if that is the case, all my projects should have happened before time. Because every task would have easily get completed within that safety. And if all tasks happen before time, my entire project can happen before time. But my experience is not that. So what are you saying? You are wrong. I said, cool down, young man, cool down. I'm right. Why projects are not getting done before time? Because we happen to waste the safety and we are not even aware of it. Now, when I said we happen to waste the safety, I didn't say you happen to waste the safety. Otherwise, you would have become more angry. Oh, you're wasting safety. I don't think we are wasting safety, and you're saying I'm wasting safety, and my team is wasting safety, and we are not aware. I said yes, yes, you are not aware. He said, what are the causes? Tell me. When this question is asked, what are the reasons? The idea is that he would invalidate that reason. He would to say, "Oh, this doesn't happen in our organization. We are different. That is not applicable. Or this may be happening at a very lower scale. See, there are just one or two or three reasons. Okay, he may get away by saying that. Oh, we are different. This doesn't happen in my organization. We are highly disciplined people, and so on, and all that blah blah blah." So my answer is that there are several reasons, and let's see. So I start giving reasons one after the other, and as he listens to them, his anger goes down, and the level of acceptance of these reasons and the level of acceptance that there is a lot of safety and it gets tested goes up. Now, what are those reasons? That is the topic that I would like to get into more detail. Okay, let's see. The first reason is student syndrome. Student syndrome. What is that? Recall your college days. This is a good technique to procrastinate. Imagine that you are sitting in your class and your professor comes. He says, "Today is Monday. I'm going to teach you this, and on Wednesday there is going to be a written test." What typically happens? Oh, there is a lot of chaos. Students say, "No, sir, please give us more time. We want to really prepare well and do well in the test." Then people say, "Oh, listen. I'm not saying this Wednesday. I'm saying next Wednesday." When he says that, what happens? Students are relaxed. They know this is a lot of time. But what do they do? Do they really start studying immediately on the same day? They'll say, well, there's a lot of time. What's the hurry? We'll do it. and there are many other attractions, other events, other activities. So they use that time given by the professor, and on the following Monday, before okay, 2 days before the test, they are in the same situation. This is what this is how this is very human. I'm not saying I'm not blaming students or anybody. This is very human. What we do first, we fight for the time, and once we get the time, we are relaxed. A lot of time is there. What's the hurry? We'll do it. We'll do it. But what's the hurry? Well, I don't have to start applying myself fully on that. Now, this particular tendency, being a human tendency, is observed even in projects also. We also fight for the time because we know that any amount of time is not going to be enough. So we, exaggerate our estimates, and we are smart people. We keep some past data at our fingertips, up our sleeves. If our estimates are questioned, we can show them. Look, we did similar project number this, and this is the task, and this is the amount of time it has taken. So you justify the time that you did, and you are so smart that you know that despite all your justification, your client is going to cut your estimate to some extent. There's going to be a global cut on estimate. If you are estimated the project that is going to take say 200 days, he's going to cut say 40 days or 30 days or whatever. So you add even that and then present. And once it is done, you are given that time. Well, there is a lot of time. This all happens intuitively. This all happens naturally. You don't really plan to do this. Your plan is to do a good job, and that's why you are fighting for the time. But once you get the time, all that goes away, and then you know there's a lot of time. There's no need to start immediately. There's no hurry. I can do it at my own pace, and then the problem starts. Now we are highly optimistic people. Let me ask one question. I asked this question to many people, and I will tell you the answers that I got. Supposing you have fought tooth and nail to get 16 days of time to do a 10-day project. You know that this project will take 10 days, nothing more. But you fought for the time and you got 16 days. Are you surprised? When do you start? Immediately? I don't think so. Very few people will start immediately. Very few.
Yes. Student syndrome does exist in corporate only. Not it is not confined to students. It exists in our life also. So
Yes,
if we
very much.
buffer
Very
time,
much.
we'll use that.
Sorry?
If we get a lot of buffer time, okay,
Yes, yes,
then we tend to start a bit late.
correct. You're absolutely correct. This is the point that I'm trying to bring home, Pravinji. Correct point. So, okay, when you have so much of time, do you really start immediately? Not okay, no chance, nobody. Maybe one or two rare guys, but I not come across any. Will you start after 6 days because you know that the project will take 10 days? Many of you will, and some of you will start after 10 days because they believe that they are faster than average, they are smarter than all others, and they can probably do it in 6 days. Now, what is the result of that? You had got 16 days of time, and you started after say 6 days or 10 days. You have wasted the buffer, the time, the safety that was given to you. And this is not known. You don't know that you are wasting the time. You know, still believe that there is a lot of time, there is enough time. See, the students know okay. Look at your college life once again. At the beginning of every semester, you make two resolutions. I am also not an exception. The resolution number one: every day I will do exercise, and resolution number two: every day I will study for a certain number of hours. These two resolutions are invariably made, and they are broken very fast. We know that if we put the normal level of effort, the time is comfortable. But we are youngsters. There are many attractions. There are many events in the college. A lot of things are happening. So we start late. We don't start at the assigned time, and then we spend more time with this self-imposed overtime, and yet more time and yet more time. And if you're a student, you will work overnight, you will cram everything just before the exam, and some of you may be able to do well, some of you may not be able to do well, some of you may even fail. The same thing happens in project environment. We intuitively know that we have a lot of safety. We can start little late. We have some other task that is attracting you. There's something else, something else, something else. The time simply runs away. So this is how student syndrome wastes the buffer and safety in estimates. So when I conveyed this point to my friend, was angry, and still that anger is there. And as I told you, he's going to resist this argument. What I am going to say? He said, "Look, what you are saying is all theory. It doesn't happen here. We don't have time for student syndrome and all that. You look at my people; they are working day and night. How come?" I said, "Wait, this is not the only reason. This is one of the human tendencies that I told you. Whether you believe or not, it is there. But this is not the only reason. Have patience and look at one more reason. There are many more, but I will look at the next reason that I am saying. The next reason I said is multitasking, right? When we say multitasking, everybody is very happy. People say, yeah, so what? Multitasking is required. And we are good. People take pride in saying that they are good at multitasking. No, just take a moment and look at yourself. You are listening to my presentation, no doubt. But there is another window open on your laptop where your mails are coming in. Some of you might be looking at your WhatsApp messages. Some of you might be playing some computer game and listening to me and playing the game. Some of you might be texting to some of your friends, or somebody might be eating something or having a cup of coffee. This is what is nothing but multitasking. If you are doing this, you are a heavy multitasker. Wait, don't feel proud about it, because in the past, many people believed that multitasking was a good way to increase your productivity. After all, you are working on several different tasks at once. So you are bound to accomplish more, right? But recent research shows that what it shows, it has demonstrated that switching from one task to the next takes a serious toll on productivity. Your productivity goes down. Multitaskers have more trouble tuning out distractions than people who focus on one task at a time. Also, doing so many different things at once can actually impair your cognitive ability. As multiple studies have confirmed, true multitasking, doing more than one task at a time, is a myth. You cannot do, your brain cannot do. Those people who think that they can split their attention between multiple tasks at once aren't actually getting more done. In fact, they are doing less, because getting more stressed out and performing worse than those who single task. Multitasking is a mythical activity in which people believe they can perform two or more tasks simultaneously as effectively as they are doing one task. Tell me, if you are watching TV, some very interesting serial or web series or whatever, that or maybe cricket match where every ball is important, IPL is going on, and also you are reading a book, you are likely to miss out on something in both, because the brain cannot fully focus while when multitasking. People take longer to complete tasks and are predisposed to error. The work that you do, you will do more errors. When people attempt to complete many tasks at one time or alternate rapidly between one task to second to third to fourth, again back to first, errors go way up and it takes longer, often more than double the time, to get the jobs done than it would have otherwise taken. This is largely because the brain is compelled to restart and refocus. What is it that makes multitasking such a productivity killer? It might seem like you are getting multiple things done at the same time, but what you are really doing is quickly shifting your attention and focus from one thing to the next and to the next and to the next, switching from one task to another to next to another, makes it difficult to tune out distractions and can cause mental blocks, and you can really slow down. So don't think that multitasking is a productivity tool. Multitasking is your enemy number one. So let me go back to my presentation. I just wanted to show you one picture. To do two things at once is to do neither. This is what was said by a Roman philosopher 100 AD. It's not a new thing, but even today, many of us believe that multitasking is good, it helps, if we're able to do more. I'm sorry, you are badly, madly, and sadly mistaken if you believe that. No, I'm showing this picture not because you are like this, but to show you the enormity of doing multitasking. It is, of course, nobody can probably start so many tasks, but thanks to this Windows, when their laptops were not there, Windows were not there, the opportunity to multitask were minimal. Now look at any laptop, you will find at least 6, 7 windows are open any given point of time, and you are tempted to look at them. Now I just want to show you a small video as to what happens when you multitask. Look what he's doing. He's typing, eating banana.
Danger and Company. Oh, hello, cat. Your invoice number. Hello? Oh, hey, dog, what's up? Yeah, I'm just talking to dog online. Can you hold on a second? Danger and Company.
Whitehead, I need that report.
Yes, sir, I'm just finishing it now. Hey, dog, what's up?
Whitehead, I need that report.
Dog, gotta go. I'm sorry. Dog, gotta go. Dog, gotta go. Mr. Cat. Mrs. Cat? Mrs. Cat?
Whitehead?
The fact is, multitasking is a myth. Our brains can't do it. You simply become less efficient and more distracted. Your error rate goes up 50%, and it takes you twice as long to do the same task. Listen to what.
So this is what multitasking does. When someone is working on, say, 4 tasks, A, B, C, and D, he is spending 10% of his productive time on each task. I repeat, when someone is working on 4 tasks, task A, B, C, and D, he is effectively spending 10% of his productive time on each task. So it amounts to 40% of the time. So where does the 60% go? The missing 60% goes here. So you have started on task A, and now it's time to switch. So the time goes to breaking concentration on the task A, picking up task B, organizing materials related to task B, remembering where you were last time you worked on task B, establishing concentration on task B, overcoming emotional inertia, recreating the train of thought that got you to the current point on task B, and by the time you are ready to do some more work, it's time to switch again. So again you go back, break your concentration on task B, pick up task C, and it continues. So this is how the 60% of your time gets wasted if you work on say 4 tasks and just keep on switching on them. Supposing, let us take a very simplistic example. See, there are four projects are to be done, and you are the only resource. You have to finish all these 4 projects. And to make it even simpler, let us say that the duration of each project is 4 weeks. All the 4 projects, for every project, you take say 4 weeks. Now you are a multitasker, or your boss says that you work 1 week on each project and report the progress. So what happens? In first week, you work on project A, second week, you work on project B, third week, you work on project C, fourth week, you work on project D, and in the 5th week, you come back to project A. Now there could be more problems, but I'm ignoring all those problems because of your loss of concentration, picking up the project again and all that. I'm not looking at that. Now, if you continue to do that, when the projects get over, the first project will get over in 13th week, second will get over in 14th, 15th, and 16th week. So 4 projects will take 16 weeks time. I'm ignoring the other thing that will go wrong, and it will take much more. But I'm just ignoring that. I'm just saying that if you do it this way, the first project will get over in 13th week. But instead, you decide that you will focus on 1 project at a time. You finish that, and then only you will work on the next. What will happen? Say you spend all the 4 weeks on project A. The project A will be done at the end of the 4th week instead of 13th week. So what is the impact of that? The impact of that is that that project can be operational. You have finished it. If it can make more money, or supposing you are finishing some building for your factory, then the production can start. So it means you are gifting the production from 5th week to 13th week by just focusing on 1 project. Earlier, everything was incomplete at the end of the 4th week. Now you are focused on 1 project, finished off, that goes into implementation, your company starts making money on it. Then you switch to project B. Again, you spend 4 weeks at a stretch, so it gets over in 8th week instead of getting over in 14th week. Third project gets over in 12th week instead of getting over in 15th week. And only the last project gets over in 16th week. So what is more beneficial for the company? Obviously this way, right? So there is a story of a software engineer. He was given 3 codes to develop, 3 different codes. And he said that each program that he will have to write, it will take 3 days. So total 9 days, he will finish off all the 3. And he said, I will work on you. Okay, you prioritize them. I will work on them in sequence. I'll take up one top priority one first, finish off, then the second, and then the third one. Now the problem was with his boss. He wanted to report progress on all the 3 tasks or on the 3 programs. So what he advised him, see, you do one thing, you spend 1 day on task A, 1 day on task B, 1 day on task C, report the progress every day, then again come back to A, B, and then again C, and then again you have 1 more round, you will be done. It sounded very simplistic, but that software developer was not happy with that, but he followed his boss's instruction. And what happened? At the end of it, it was found that he had exceeded the time like anything. So he had to use some safety up his sleeve. He lost that. The productivity of the person went down, and nobody was happy. Had he completed at least one code in 3 days, that code could have gone into operations, or the next fellow would have taken it up, maybe for testing or integration or whatever. But this way of doing it, doing the multitasking, no. Again, let me say that this is not something from the moon. This is quite human, quite natural. We somehow intuitively feel that we should, if we work on more tasks, we'll deliver them faster. After all, we are responsible for all of them. We have to finish all of them. So why not to work on them and finish them up? But that way, we lose time, we lose safety, we lose whatever buffer which is there implicitly or explicitly. No, see, my friend to whom I was, you're telling him this, I felt that somehow he is not believing. So see, okay, what I told him so far, I told him about student syndrome, and then I was telling him about multitasking, but somehow I found that he is not convinced. So I said, you do one thing, write this word multitasking 10 times. Okay, before you start writing time yourself, you go on writing it 10 times and note the time that you take. After that, you do this thing. Create a table like this and have this written there. M, MULTI, MUL, MU, and so on. Count even that time also. And go to the first row, that is where M is written, you write U after that. Then go to the second row, where multi is written, write T after that. Then go to the second row, MUL is written. Then you write T after that. And that is how you complete it. Just to demonstrate you, okay, let me do it for you. Are you able to see this? Hello, you are able to see this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So how this type of exercise is to be done? First, you time myself and create this table. Then I go here, I type MU. Then I go here, MULTI, then MULT, then MUL, then MU, then MULTI, then MULTIT, MULT, MULT, MUL. Then again I come back here, MUL, MULTI, TA, MULTI, MULT. I keep on doing that till I complete the word multitasking 10 times. Now you can imagine how much time it will take. I request you to take a snap of this and try doing this exercise today itself and convey to us on WhatsApp how much time you took when you just wrote the word multitasking 10 times and when you really did multitasking in writing and created a table like this and then wrote it like this. This will be an eye-opener for you. If you still believe that multitasking is good, please do this simple exercise, take a snapshot of it, take a photograph of it, and my request to you is please do it today itself and convey your results that when you did single tasking, wrote it multitasking 10 times, how much time you take, how much time you took, and then how much time you took to create this table and fill it. Okay? So, and judge yourself on time and accuracy, you might make mistakes. And how did you feel doing like this? If you have to work like this, you will run away. I'm willing to bet. So far we have talked about student syndrome and multitasking. If you chase two rabbits, you will not catch either one. If you chase two rabbits, you imagine there are rabbits running around, and you chase both the rabbits, you will not be able to catch anyone. So if you chase only one, there is a good chance that you will catch at least one. So multitasking is a time-wasting behavior. The buffer, the safety that is there in our estimates is wasted due to multitasking. So now my friend who was agree on me, I saw the signs of cooling down. First, it was student syndrome. Now I talked about multitasking. Now there are some more reasons. Let's talk about them. The next reason is delays accumulate, advances do not. Delays accumulate, advances do not. What does it mean? It simply means that in project environment, some tasks get done earlier. Not that every task is delayed. Some tasks do happen earlier, but that just doesn't matter. How come? It has saved some time, isn't it? Let's see. See, you are the resource working on a task. You had estimated sometimes say 10 days and you have finished it off in 8 days. You say, I'm done. Now what? You go to your boss and tell them, boss, I had done a super efficient job. I did an very intelligent job. Yes, what is that? See, this task I had estimated it would take 10 days. I have finished it today on 8th day. What do you think the reaction of your boss? You will expect that he will reward you? From mistaken. What he will think that you are sandbagging your estimates. You are giving much more estimate than the time that you needed. So what he will do? Next time when you give your estimate, he is going to cut that. So how do you feel? Horrible. This is not the only thing. The second thing is that you have finished your task early. Now you want somebody else to take it up and take it forward. It's a project environment. You are not the only one who is working. You are working on a path, and you have finished your task, and you expect the next person to take it up. But he is busy elsewhere. He is not taking it up. So the 2 days that you saved, they just go waste. Not only that, there is another human aspect. If you do this often, what do you think? Would be the reaction of your colleagues who are struggling for time, who keep working late and somehow finish their jobs? They are not going to like it. So what is the use when you do early finishes? That time, the time that you saved, the buffer, the safety that you had in the task was not required. So what you do? You simply waste it. So what is the impact on your morale? You say, what is the point in finishing early? My boss is not appreciating. He's cutting my estimates, thinking that I'm sandbagging. He didn't believe that I did a super intelligent, super efficient job. Why should I do that? My colleagues don't like me, and I want the project to move faster, but there's nobody to take my task forward. So what do I do? So this is what happens in sequential tasks. You know it well that in project environment there are several paths. So what happens there? Let's consider. Let us see that there are 4 tasks or 4 paths. Task A, B, C, and D. They are happening in parallel. We need to finish all of them so that task A could be a kind of assembly kind of thing or something where all the 4 tasks are required to be completed before task A can even be started. Now let us see what happens. Task A got finished 5 days ahead. Task B and task C, they also finished 5 days ahead of time. 5 days, all 3 tasks. But task D, there was a problem and he took 15 days more than what was assigned. So what happens? What happens to the tasks that were finished earlier? There was a buffer, there was a safety. But since the next task cannot start, that safety goes waste. So what happens? Early finishes don't matter. Late finishes, delays, they get passed on in full to the next task. So this is the damage that happens because of the nature of the projects, that early finishes don't matter, late finishes the delays are passed to the next task in full. So delays accumulate, advances do not, and thus the safety or buffer gets wasted. So far we have talked about 3 reasons. First one is student syndrome, multitasking, and the third one is delays accumulate, advances do not. But this is not all. There are some more reasons. So let's look at them. Parkinson's law says that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. It means that if you give yourself a week to complete a 2-hour task, then psychologically speaking, the task will increase in complexity and become more daunting so as to feel that way. Parkinson's law works because people give task estimates longer than they really need. Sometimes because they want some legroom or some buffer. See, you want to keep your estimate, right? You want to do the task within that estimate, and you also know that there is some amount of variability. So you give more time, and then you use that time. The idea is that the longer something takes to complete, the better quality it must inherently be. There is something called 3 minute egg rule. If you boil the egg for 3 minutes, then it is okay, properly boiled. Otherwise, it is not. See, look at how people spend time in the offices. The office time is say 9 to 5. They have some work. Do they finish up it off faster and then relax? They stretch the work till the end of the day. If you find that somebody is sitting idle, okay, other people don't like it, the bosses don't like it. So what's the point in finishing early and draw your boss's attention, thinking that this man is not doing any work? So people just stretch the work to last the time that is available. So you remain busy for the entire day and take it easy, look busy kind of thing. If you are given say 3 months to write a report, you will take 3 months. But if you are given just 3 days, you never know. You might even do a better job because you're focused. You will do a great quality job. But 3 months, you will take it easy, and maybe it may not be a great one. When you when you give yourself only 2 hours to complete a full day's work, just you are given 2 hours because there is something that you need to do, some personal thing you have to go home, and boss says you finish your work and then go. There are only 2 hours available. You become super efficient. You focus, incredible focus, and you finish all your tasks, moving from one task to another only after completion. This is possible, but normally we don't think that way. We say we have to do this task in this daytime. So how do you know whether you or your team is suffering from Parkinson's law? Very easy. There's a sign that Dr. Goldrat had once said. You look at the execution. If most tasks are getting done around the estimate, around little bit here and there, it means very definitely people are suffering from Parkinson's law. They are finishing it earlier and then they keep polishing. Even what happens? Supposing you are doing a project and top management has given you the budget of say $10 million, and you are nearing the end, and you realize that you really don't need 10 million. Only 7 millions are enough. Will you take that 3 million and give it back to the top management? Saying that okay, you please take it back. I don't need it anymore. Okay, will you do that? If you do it, next time your budget will be cut. So what do? You call your team, tell them that see, let us do a state of the art kind of thing. Let's do something jazzy. Let's do something different. This that and eat up all the budget. So this is what happens when when people suffer from Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law says work expands to fill the time available for the completion, and it often exceeds also. The amount of time which one has to perform a task is the amount of time it will take to complete the task. Very simple. You give me 3 hours or 3 days or 15 days. You know something by own experience about this presentation that I'm making. I'm ready at least 1 week in advance. Before I make the announcement, I'm ready. But after I make the announcement, I use that week to polish it. And at the end of it, I'm proud. Oh, I have made it jazzy. I added this. I added that. But I had done a reasonably good job in about 4 to 5 days, maximum 1 week. But I keep polishing that. Now, why I do that? Because I want to keep my commitment that I will do this presentation. And personally, my own quality standards are rather too high. And unless I'm satisfied with that, I don't stop. I don't stop working on that. But this happens. I experience that. I experience that in even other tasks also. See, the effort required is okay. This chart requires the effort that is really required. But if there is a more time available, okay, the work keeps on expanding till that time is really exhausted. So the more time you have for completing a task, the more time you will waste. This time is really not required. So there are some generalizations and the corollaries. I'm sure you will like them. So that's why I'm presenting them over here. The more time you have for completing a task, the more time you will waste. Simple. Data expands to fill the space available for storage. Howsoever large the hard disk that you buy, or look at your phone, how many phones you have changed, and how much space that you kept on increasing, and now when there's a time to change your current phone, you will certainly look for more space. If there are so many videos that you want to save, that any amount of space is not enough. Take it easy, but look busy kind of attitude that we have. So we have enough time. We are almost ready. So keep polishing it. Expenditures rise to meet income. Now you look back at your own salary when you started your career and how many zeros you have added now, and also look at the expenditures that you have got. Now you have 100 reasons for that. Fine, but even if those reasons are not there, your expenditures would have increased even otherwise. The smallest function, I'm sorry, the smaller the function, the greater the management. If you are organizing a big function, okay, some amount of management will be required. But if the function is small, you end up in doing a lot more management. You micromanage it. Because why? You have time. If you wait until the last minute, it only takes a minute to do. So this is something very funny. If the stomach expands to accommodate the amount of junk food available. And finally, the amount of junk carried is in direct proportion to the amount of space available. If you have a big cupboard, well, you will fill it fully. But even if when you had a smaller cupboard, you were okay with that, isn't it? So this is what the Parkinson's law that does with us. Now what? Parkinson's law is one more way, sure way to waste the buffer of safety in project estimates. Now, my friend was angry in the beginning when I told him about that there's so much of safety you have, and I started explaining the reasons one after the other. Student syndrome, multitasking, delays accumulate, but advances don't, and now Parkinson's law. I find that he has cooled down. He somehow it has touched the chord. He feels that is something of this kind is happening in his organization also. So he asked me, are these the only reasons or there are some more? I said, wait, there are some more reasons. Let's have a look at them. The next reason that I told him is that it's Murphy's law. What is Murphy's law? It's something, what is this happening? The slide is upside down. Can you people see this? I wanted it okay, other way around, but something went wrong and the slide is upside down. And this is what precisely the Murphy's law is. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. Right? See, many times it happens that your project is going on very well. You are so happy. So on Friday evening, you go home with a very happy state of mind. And when Monday morning you come and you find that something has gone wrong somewhere and your project is back by a couple of weeks. That's unexpected thing that happens to you, to your project. This happens in our personal life also. We do many things, many tasks, and suddenly something goes wrong and everything goes topsy-turvy. So this Murphy's law is a major time killer in our projects and even otherwise. Let us see some popular mutations to understand this in a better way. The chance of the bread falling with the buttered side down is directly proportional to the cost of the carpet. If the carpet is expensive, the chances are more. No, this sounds like a joke, but it's true. You will, you'll always find something in the last place you look for. I think I'll skip this because I'm running out of time. So I'll quickly just read them and go ahead. If you're looking for more than one thing, you'll find the most important one last. No matter how long or how hard you shop for an item, after you have bought it, it will be on sale somewhere else cheaper. The light at the end of the tunnel is another train coming in. The file you are looking for is always at the bottom of the largest pile. If you change the queues, the one you have left will start moving faster. When you dial a wrong number, well, this applies to landline, you'll never get an engaged tone. If you're dialing a number of your friend, to something you want to talk to him urgently, that number you will get engaged. But if you happen to dial the wrong number, the other person picks it. And if there are 100 possible eventualities that can happen in your project, and you are prepared for 99 out of them, those 99 will not occur. But the one eventuality for which you are not prepared will happen. And that is what the Murphy's Law is about. It is a major contributor to investing the safety or buffer in your project estimate. So for we have seen five reasons, right? Student syndrome, multitasking, delays accumulate, Parkinson's law, and Murphy's law. Is that all? I said no. There are some more. So what are those? Let us quickly run through them. The first one is meeting culture. Some organizations have meeting culture. They have frequent meetings. They call so many people, and a lot of time gets wasted. Many times the agenda is not fixed. Nobody cares to circulate the matter to be discussed. People don't come prepared. They don't come on time. Somebody dominates the meeting. Many times meetings are inconclusive. Then again meetings are called, and the people who are not involved, not affected, they are also invited for the meeting. And there are many such meetings happening. This is called meeting culture. So if this kind of culture is there in your organization, it wastes a lot of time of the people, and the buffer that they had, the safety that they had, just gone. The next one is training culture. Come on, training is something good, required, one should have it, and all that, fine. With due respect to that, what happens is that when you have this kind of training culture, even HR is given a budget, they are given a KRA, they are given a target that every employee must undergo at least 3 days training in a year. Good thought. So what happens? An executive goes to HR manager and says, last time you sent me to Goa for training. This time I want to go to Shimla. The training manager asks, which topic? He said, that you decide. I will decide the venue, you decide the menu. The offsite training program, for many people, they are paid holidays. They are taken away from the office so that they are not disturbed. Lot of hammering is done. Of course, they learn something, no doubt. But do they carry it back to their work? Big question mark. So this training culture, forcing people to go for training, and then there is no follow-up whether that training was really helping him or not, it was required or not, how he is using that, nothing. There are 10 people say for certain days in a year or something, and feel happy that, oh, you are training your people, you are taking care of them, you are developing them. No, sir. You are wasting their time, and that is how their buffer and safety gets wasted. Then there is called rocking chair syndrome. You know what? Okay, rocking chair. See, now I am rocking my chair. I am rocking. What am I doing? Lot of activity. But my chair hasn't moved an inch ahead. Many times in project environment, there are many activities happening. Project managers are tempted to start on many tasks, whether there are enough material, there are enough approval, or anything or not. They just start. So there's a lot of activity. People are doing a lot of work. But as the project is concerned, there's no progress. So that is called rocking chair syndrome. But people like that because they get a feel. A lot of work is happening. But in reality, no. And the last one is wait and queue. I am a resource working on a project. I am working on a task. When I look on my table, there are 10 other tasks lined up, and they are waiting. when the tasks are waiting in the queue, what happens to the buffer or safety that they had carried with them? Lost, wasted. So time is what we want most, but we use worst. So what is the conclusion? What is the conclusion? There is a lot of buffer or safety in our project estimates, and we waste most of it. There is a lot of safety in or buffer in our project estimates, and we waste most of it. And the cause that waste the buffer or safety are. Where are the causes? I want you to tell me. What are the first cause that we discussed? I'll go on writing here. Please tell me. Please unmute your mics.
Student syndrome.
Student syndrome.
Everybody knows that, huh? Next.
रोज मुलाकात होती है उससे.
Multitasking.
Multitasking.
People are not multitasking today.
Thank God. Or thanks to them. Then,
And delays are.
oh, people are making notes, it means. Good. Then,
Parkinson's law.
Parkinson's.
Parkinson's, that was the fifth one. We are missing one.
Murphy.
Correct.
Yeah. So the fourth.
If you experience Murphy's law, you'll never forget it.
So I thought it's the other way around.
Yes, it
Well,
was
First
the
was
other way
Parkinson's
around.
as well.
Yes, correct, sir.
Now, then after that,
Yeah, it was.
just before this slide we have discussed.
Meeting culture, training culture, rocking chair culture.
Training culture, rocking chair, and wait and queue.
And wait and queue. So I'm very happy. It means you guys are really listening to it. So I'm really glad that you did this. And so if you have noted them, I would say that you can take a snapshot and or actually note them down, and always see that I'm not able to. And see that, okay, where your actual time goes, okay, gets wasted. So these are the 9 reasons that we identified, we discussed, we understood. And we also understood that there is a lot of safety in our estimates. Now, there is safety to the extent of anything between 80 to 95%. So if we have so much of safety, and if these are the things that is wasting our safety, so that is why we say that our projects are getting late. Now, $1 million question. $1 million question. We said that we have a lot of safety and we are wasting it. How do we turn the table? How do we do that? Is there any way? We don't like this, wasting the time like this. It's very precious for us. How do we see? If there is safety, it's good. Nobody else knows. Only we know now. So how do we use it? This buffer of safety for the for our benefit, for benefit of our project, for benefit of our organization. See, we know that there are buffers everywhere. Everywhere. Anything that you do, there are buffers. There are buffers in manufacturing environment. There are buffers in distribution. And for projects, we just now saw how much buffers are there. The percentage may vary. Or if you are doing anything in your organization or your personal work, anything, there are buffers. So what do we do about it? We can certainly stop their wastage by implementing TOC solutions. There are solutions for this three thing that I said. There is DBR or DBR. There is a replenishment solution for distribution system and CCPM for projects. We can implement that. So as a result of that, this safety will be used for the benefit of the organization. So the question is, if that is the case, can we discuss that? Yes, we can, but it could take lot of time. It's a matter of training. Each of this application could take a day or two. So possibly I may not be able to do it online in this kind of 90-minute session. Then what can we do? Now you are eager, you must know something. What I will do is, in our next session, I will discuss the part, only a small part of all these three applications to show how these buffers are managed, how these buffers are used for the benefit of the organization. I will not be talking about the actual solution. So don't think that you cannot just implement that. You have to implement a solution, and as a part of the solution, there is something called buffer management that is done. So I will be discussing that to give you an idea, to attract you to find out, learn more about these solutions per se, so that you are able to manage that. So, okay, so far we have conducted this session, TOC overview, 5 focusing steps, throughput accounting, resolving conflicts, asking right questions, why do people resist change, constraints no more, TOC for support functions. Our last discussion was on vicious cycles and how to reverse them. And our today's topic was why projects are usually late. Now, I have not discussed everything about that. I just talked about one element of safety. There are more reasons also as to why the projects go late. But if and when we talk about CCPM solution, maybe we can discuss that. And our next session, next topic after 2 weeks will be using buffers in TOC application. How we use the buffers, how we use the buffer safety or the time that we have in our buffers. The bad news is time flies. The good news is you are the pilot. You are the pilot. So you can have actually control over the time, over the buffer, over the safety. So that is what we are going to look at in our next session after 2 weeks. So thank you for your time and patience.